Recently, the famous atheist Alex O'Connor had a debate, not with a human being, but with an AI Catholic apologist from the website Catholic Answers. Now, I won't mince words here. I like Alex, but this is not the own that he thinks it is. AI can be beaten. It's AI. Right now, we are still smarter than AI at the engineering level, at the philosophical level. In the future, this could change. If Alex O'Connor, who seems to have been quite pleased with himself for defeating this AI in a logical game of wits, is happy that he beat the AI, well then, good for him. If he thinks instead that he is able in turn, and it seems like a bait and switch to me, to ridicule or think that he has shown a logical contradiction in God's existence or Catholic theology, he is sorely mistaken. There is a logical contradiction shown here, to be sure, but it is with Alex, not with God. I hope you'll excuse me for being a little bit more blunt than normal. Alex says that slavery in the Bible, he insinuates, he argues that this is a logical contradiction in the existence of God as classical Christian theists would conceive of God. If God is all-powerful and all-loving, if God is omnipotent, then he can do anything. If he could forbid people through moral law, to further this, from having slaves, why then is there slavery in the Bible? And not just slavery in the Bible, but it seems to be God is giving rules for slavery, how to do slavery properly, the right way. Now, these are troubling passages to be sure. I struggled with this when I began to read the Bible, but this is not the knockdown, drag-out argument that some atheists seem to think it is. I'm going to push back right off the bat. First of all, there are more slaves today. Let's just cut the nonsense. There are more slaves today, approximately 3 times as many, than were in slavery in the transatlantic slave trade. I saw one article that estimates approximately 1 in 200 people. There are women taken out of this country all the time and sold into sexual slavery, sexual trafficking, human trafficking. I am not defending slavery. Slavery is, to be clear, very immoral. But I'm saying if you really believe that, then perhaps we should try to do something to end the slavery taking place every day, right now. But if instead you would like to use the slavery mentioned in the Bible as a rhetorical mechanism to argue against the existence of God, this is a bigger problem, if I might be blunt but respectful. I like Alex. To Alex's worldview, Alex does not believe that morality is real. Unless he's changed his mind, Alex doesn't believe that anything is actually objectively evil.
Maybe you can tell me what I'm missing from my picture then, because like I say, I'm broadly speaking an ethical emotivist. But
say more about the consequences of that. What does that mean?
I'm not sort of, I don't know, I always like to be a little bit agnostic about these things, you know, open to change and all that, but I'm broadly attracted to this view that when we make ethical statements or pronouncements, we're essentially just expressing emotions at each other. And so when I say that murder is wrong, I'm sort of expressing some kind of distaste, or I'm expressing something akin to saying, don't do that, which is just like a command. It doesn't have any truth value. It's not even subjectively true or false. It's just like a command or an expression.
Alex has described himself as an ethical emotivist. And to be clear, this is sort of philosophical mumbo-jumbo, for slavery isn't actually evil. Neither is rape nor torture. To express an ethical or moral judgment is the same as expressing what type of music you like, whether it's country music or rock and roll or classical, whether you like chocolate ice cream or vanilla. It's simply a statement of displeasure, of distaste. So torture and rape and murder and slavery, to say that these things are wrong is simply to express your distaste for them. And this is my fundamental problem with Alex. I like Alex. I think he's one of the better YouTube atheists out there. He's furthered the conversation from the nonsense Reddit stuff. And yet, he complains the Bible doesn't condemn slavery, but his worldview allows for everything. He complains that the Bible doesn't condemn slavery hard enough, emphatically enough, clearly enough. His worldview can condemn nothing any more than it can condemn pistachio-flavored ice cream. If nothing is evil, if rape, if torture, if murder are not evil, then on what ground can you stand and say that the slavery in the Bible is evil? You've destroyed the grounds upon which the people who abolished slavery in this country argued. You've abolished the grounds upon which Martin Luther King Jr. even argued that black Americans should be treated with equal rights to white Americans. Atheism is responsible largely for the increase in nihilism. And as I was wrestling with theism versus atheism, I found no solid reason, to see that nihilism wasn't the correct view, just nature read with tooth and claw. I have no problem saying that we are animals, we're rational animals, as Aristotle would say. But if we are nothing more than primates with slightly sophisticated nervous systems, then I see no reason to think that slavery is wrong. When I look at other primates, when I look at other animals, I see violence, I see the murder and taking of others' youngs for food sources. I see wiping out and abusing entire other groups of primates. Why on earth would not the strongest primates also enslave and abuse others? The only reason is because we think, whether we're right or not, that there is moral consequence to our actions, whether it's sexually, and we don't like to talk about that one now, in terms of taking others' rights of oppression, but all the talk of my rights end where your rights begin, all the talk of offensive speech versus freedom of speech or slavery itself go out the window if there is no good or evil. Now, you can argue, as perhaps Alex would, that, well, these are just polite cultural constructions, which I would argue were constructed then under largely Christian and classical influences. To discard that is to discard us all, as Nietzsche well knew. You can say, well, I don't like suffering. It doesn't seem to me that, Alex might say, that murder is objectively evil, rape is not objectively evil, but I don't think that suffering is good. Why? Because it's not pleasant. Who cares? Who cares? In 100 billion years, our species will not exist, neither will anyone be around to consider the moral validity of our actions. The person who uses their hands to feed the poor and the person who uses their hands to strangle a homeless person, God forbid, those are morally equivalent. They're weighted morally nil in the grand scheme of things if there is no good or evil. I think this is a silly objection, and really what we should be doing if we can agree that slavery is evil is finding ways to pressure our government to do something about the slavery right now. The difference between Alex and me is that as a Christian, I have solid ground philosophically upon which to stand to say that slavery is objectively evil. I had nearly 20 minutes of me walking through the biblical narrative, trying to explain the bigger picture here. I don't have to include it. I'm not going to. Why? Alex O'Connor's view, as nice of a guy as he is, as intelligent as he is, he hasn't put this together yet. He comes from a view that thinks that nothing is wrong, and he's criticizing a view that, whether you accept the biblical narrative or not, he's criticizing a view that thinks that God is permitting all kinds of things that God does not approve of, trying to save us from ourselves. If Alex finds that biblical narrative distasteful, who cares? I don't have to defend something he finds distasteful. Well, you say, well, Alex thinks that it's a contradiction within the Christian theist paradigm. Again, who cares? Why are moral contradictions wrong if there's nothing moral to the universe? This is not a cop-out, and I will not be seen as defending slavery, but he has no grounds upon which to stand to criticize anything. Brave people in the past, out of moral conviction, stood up against the dictators and terror in the world, people who abuse women and children, including abusive slavers, out of moral conviction. But Alex's view, as polite as he is, has reduced the entire conversation to the level of I prefer chocolate ice cream and you prefer pistachio. The contradiction is not in God, the contradiction is in Alex.